Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Sober Spartan podcast. And like I've told you before, I wanted to get some guests on to kind of have conversations about sobriety and be able to learn from other people's stories, because that's probably one of the most powerful things for me was learning from other people. So I got a guest on. I got a real treat for you. His name is Chase. So Chase, I'll kind of pass it over to you. Do you want to give us a little bit of
Yeah,
introduction, a little bit about your background, that kind of thing?
sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm so sorry, like your first guest and you know, you had to just like take your licks and go with this guy. But no, I appreciate you very much for having me on. And my background, I guess like the most relevant stuff is I'm 38 years old, struggled with alcohol, really started drinking consistently, by age 11 or 12. Um, and I got two little girls. Those are also very relevant because they have definitely helped me in my journey to show me the stark contrast of what that's like what I was how I was living before kids. And really sort of the dangerous part is like I knew there was some bad stuff there. I knew like I might have a problem, like that kind of little hum that starts playing in the background. But not until I had kids did I really realize like, okay, like these things have to stop because these things with my kids have to start. And so that was paramount in me being able to actually observe that in my world. And so my hat's off to a lot of people that don't have kids that come to these realizations and are able to acknowledge like all of these uh, problems inherent in their own daily lives, that are able to make that change on their own and that acknowledgement on their own. Because for me, had it not been for my kids, I probably would still be doing the same old stuff, hanging with the same old crowd, and every bit of that just revolved around drinking. Like the work week revolved around what we were going to do that weekend, and that weekend better have like a big booze fest in it somewhere, otherwise it wasn't a weekend. And like and then we
Yeah.
just repeat the cycle 365 days. So yeah, that was a long-winded intro, but yeah, that's my background, and we can just go from there, I guess.
No, that's good. And I can relate with that quite a bit because I was the same kind of way, right? Like I didn't really do anything other than drink. Like I would go to work, usually still hungover or not even slept from the night before, and then just waiting and planning while I'm at work to go out and drink again, right? And it was just a repeating cycle. And it was like I never thought there was an issue with it because every single person that I was around, it was the same thing. It was like we were all out to party, to get drunk, right? And we thought we were having good times, and maybe in the beginning it was, right? Until eventually it turned into something that we never even thought that would end up. Like we seen people who were homeless, stuff like this, and we never really stopped to think about how those people ended up in that situation until we get further in our journey on drinking and stuff like that. And then we're
Yep.
like, oh, okay, well, I can see how that can happen now. But I guess what I want to kind of talk about is what was your life before you ended up getting sober in the first place? Like what kinds of routines did you have?
Yeah.
How were your relationships? How was work? Stuff like that.
Um, so it was kind of a really weird part of my life. And when I look back on my life just in general now, it's like I see a lot of things that should have caught my attention before. And I was always of like that mindset, like, you got it great, man. Like life's perfect. Don't question it. Like, you're just complaining. And I realized, man, if I've really come to terms with myself and like noticed a lot of things that were big red flags before I really like took any action with them. But I mean, my life before, there were a few people that came into my life to really shed some light on, or get me thinking about like what might be going on behind the scenes with me, and like what struggles I might be having, and alcoholism and all that stuff. Um, so I mean, it was like I'd get through the work week, often hungover, and maybe I'd finally get a little clear headed by Thursday or Friday, and then Friday night I would hardly sleep. I'd drink a bottle of Jack
Mm-hmm.
Daniels, and and make sure all my friends were ready to do that with me, and like, um, it's sad because we were like lifelong friends, and that really, unfortunately, was like our common bond. And I think that becomes the case with a lot of alcoholics, is that the
Yeah.
over time your friendship basis is the booze. Um, So yeah, there was, it was just that lifestyle. I was in like my mid to late 20s, when all this was like really hitting at its hardest. And then I had my kids, I had my daughters, and that was also stressful in and of itself because of I they did not come from like families like there's no marriages. Um, it was again just me drunk more often than not, calling people up in the middle of the night kind of thing.
Hmm.
And if you do that enough, you'll have kids. So they don't tell you that.
Yeah.
They don't teach you that in like sex education, but
No.
that's another way to the kids. So anyway, but uh one of the moms I did actually like date for a while, and she's very smart, very level headed. She's a federal attorney, and she started getting me to think more about what like how I was living, just and like really with no ambition. It's weird. Like it's weird to look at who I am now and who I was even just 10 years ago. And I was in a spot in life where I didn't um I just thought that was the cycle, the daily or weekly cycle. Like, just go to work, make your paycheck and spend it on dinners and booze and just fun. Go live a fun life. I had also lost my mom around that time. I lost her when I was 26.
Mhm.
So I was definitely in, riding a very tall wave of non-sobriety. Um, but yeah, I mean that was really it was dark. Like that's where my life was. It was just dark. I was depressed, but I thought I was happy because like the weekends and the booze, it felt good. Felt like I was having fun and living life. Um, but yeah, man, like then I started just realizing, um, I don't know, like something was just off. I was constantly in like a bit of sorrow or like a bit of darkness. Again, answering all of that with more drinking. And then it started just like hitting these really bad, especially like after like when my kids were newborns. Um, Lots of depression from like all angles, or like anxieties from all angles. And again, like because I had gone so long with just using alcohol as a crutch for all of that, like all of life's problems that should arise. Um, I didn't have like the natural fortitude to deal with a lot of these stressors, and so the alcoholism kind of got even deeper. It wasn't like a weekend thing; it was like a nightly thing. But I was like, I'll just have a couple
Mhm.
drinks a night,
Yeah.
and started off that way. I'm gonna live like a 1950s man. But
I
then
know that album.
and then like just soon after, like a year into that kind of lifestyle, just things were really piling up. Um, which is what happens when you drink through your problems. They wait there for you, and they just get bigger and stronger, um, while you're sitting the bench. So that's really like I don't know if that really encompassed to answer your question, but like that's where I was before starting to get sober. That's like kind of where it was at its worst consistently.
Mhm.
And again, I mean, it's just common denominator. I introduced more booze into my life more consistently, so the turmoil magically also seemed to be more consistent.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That answers the question perfectly. And like when I think back to when I was still in the problem, I was still drinking, stuff like that. Like it was kind of like what you described. It wasn't just like any one thing. Like at the end there was something that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, but it was a buildup of things over time. Like in the beginning, even for me, um me and my friends, we just thought it was a joke. It's, oh, there's Andrew, the alcoholic, right? And I just thought nothing of it, right? I just thought it was funny at the time
Right.
because I'd be the one to go out and I'd be buying like a 40 pounder, I'd be buying a 30 case, and they'd be like, oh, you got booze for the whole weekend? No, that's for tonight. You know what I
Right.
mean? So um it was never really one thing. But was there something for you that was that last straw where you're like, okay, enough is enough, like the compounding built up to that?
Yeah. Until again, I got to be completely honest. I mean, I backslid or relapsed, whatever the terminology you want to use. Let's see, where are we at? I would say like within the month, like within the past 4 weeks. Um,
Mhm.
so it's hard, that I can only answer it like from that standpoint. The thing is, I get my kids every other week. So, sometimes when I don't have them, um, there's things that can come up that can trigger me to want to drink. Again, normally it's like if I forget how awful the last time was, which for some reason is easy to do. It's easy to kind of, because you feel good. You're in this clear-headed space. You've been
Yeah.
sober for a long time. Your biochemistry feels amazing, and you kind of forget that part. We just inherently think that alcohol is going to enhance that sensation and not deplete it or take away from it in any way. So with that, I mean, I would say like some of the again, I'm just here to be honest. Had
Yeah,
hip surgery.
absolutely.
Not trying to make excuses, but I'm just giving you the
Mhm.
timeline of events. Hip
Yeah.
surgery, narcotics were prescribed, and then once the
Mhm.
narcotics ran out, um, I was like, you know what? It probably would be okay to medicate with booze instead of like all these aspirins
Mhm.
and Tylenols and stuff. Again, kind of the things we tell ourselves. And so I went back into like a relapsed, and the problem was I did that. I didn't go like crazy or stupid. I mean, I'm laid up in bed, but I did that for a few days with my kid here. And that was something
Mhm.
I'd never done before. That was unprecedented. I never drank around my kids. That was kind of like the one, trophy I could hang on to. Um, and so that went away within the past, like about a month ago. Um, and I told my other daughter's mom about it. Um, and she doesn't hold punches, which is why I like to talk to her about stuff. She's
Yep.
she nails me to the cross, and like
You
that's
need
okay.
people
That's
like
why
that in your life.
absolutely that's why I go to her with this stuff. Because I know I'm going to get my ass handed to me, and she did, and she just like, but like almost like politely, but like in a way to let me know, like Chase, you've never done this before. Like so we have to look at it analytically like that. Like this
Yeah.
is a line you've never crossed. So what does that mean about your journey with sobriety? Like, yeah, you can go months and even years without drinking, but then you don't. And that's like something that's of concern to me and should be to you too. Um, so that was like her speech to me, and that's what really made me realize, like, it's you think of it so innocent. And again, it's not like I was partying like 3 a.m. headbanging to some Def Leppard type, like
Yeah.
I'm, making sure she's tucked in, she's fed and all that. And, we play and stuff. But still, it was like much lighter, of a journey of relapse. But nevertheless, like that's something that has really wrenched my heart, because that's something that was very important to me, and something that I, um, just, just put a great deal of pride into, and just like importance into. Was that just I would never drink around my kids, and then I did.
Mhm.
And so that's been something I've been dealing with, and that's something that, like, to answer your question, I know it's a very long-winded answer, but that's really that's like the latest thing that's really been kind of just constantly front and center in my brain, causing me
Mhm.
stress, is that I let that happen. Like I did that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And like, just so you know, it's like it's very, very rare for someone to make the decision to like, hey, I want to get sober, and then they're just sober for the rest of their life. Like I know a couple people that have done something like that, but like
Yeah.
pretty much every single person I've talked to, they've had multiple attempts to try. Like even myself, like I would even think I'm on the lower end of the spectrum. It took me about 4 times of actually trying to get sober, like saying, hey, this is enough. That's it.
Yeah.
Before it actually was an attempt that actually was long term, right? So just
Yeah.
don't feel like if you slide back or anything like that, like oh shit, I got to give up, right? Because I've heard some people say that too. It's like oh I've already tried it. I'm just this is just the way life is, right? And that's not
Right.
the way it has to be. And then that's another reason why I wanted to have guests on and stuff like that to talk through this stuff, because it's like it doesn't matter how many times you mess up. We're humans, right? That's just natural,
Yeah.
right? That's just part of life. But it matters with getting back up on the horse and just driving forward with it, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's an important message too. Is this like it doesn't matter how bad you think it is, just keep going forward, and it'll never be a loss, because eventually,
Yeah.
if you keep learning something each time, because we don't want to fall back into the insanity of continuing to do the same thing over and over and expect different results. We have to learn something every time we mess up. So I guess my question for you was like, what do you think is one thing you learned from this last relapse that maybe somebody could get some value out of?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it, it's for me, it's just as best as I can trying to just be honest with myself. You know, it's
Mhm.
there's you can like map out all the triggers, and but for me it's like the next day they're you know, if I had to map out 10 triggers per day, I would have like a new set of triggers each day. It's like it's a
Mhm.
moving target. So it's important to be aware of those things and like, you know, be able to identify them, or and be able to even identify those that relate or kind of in the same camp as others. But um I mean, really, man, for me it's just, for me it's a reminder, like I have to do better for my kids. Like I have to do
Mhm.
better long term. And that's also what you got to watch out for, is like, you know, so what if you woke up the next day, you know, you blacked out, you woke up the next day though, but you behaved. You didn't get on your phone, you didn't get on Facebook, you didn't post any message boards or anything, you didn't offend
Yeah.
anybody. You know, like
Yeah.
we wake, that's part of the reason we wake up to begin with. It's like, you know, 6 a.m. and we're like in a panic, you know, flop, sweat, induced like stress mode. And it's because we're like, what did I
Yeah.
do? Who did I hurt? And sometimes the answer is nobody, but that, um, we got to be careful not to say like, okay, well, see, I can behave when I drink, and so maybe I'll
Mm.
practice doing that. I'll practice just better behavior when drinking. Like it, you know, like those are the honest conversations I would say you need to have with yourself, because there may not always be some line in the sand that you crossed. There may not be some major transgression for you to like take pause and be like, dude, holy shit, I gotta change something about what I'm doing. It's got to be one of those painful undertakings where you really do look in the mirror, give yourself, you know, like at like 30 minutes before bedtime to just say like what how am I mapping out my life? Am I on a path of like where I want to be going? You know, where like a lot of the pitfalls I hit last time. And it's like we don't like to do that stuff because it's painful. You got to go back and revisit a lot of pain. You have to face a lot of present shortcomings, you know, again, like looking yourself in the mirror and figuring out where you suck. Um, so that's, I mean, you know, and I don't know if that answered your question. That's just really what it's
Yeah.
hard to give like a one stop answer to that. It's
Yeah.
just, I mean, it's one of those things you could just talk about for days.
100%. No, no, I completely get it. And like for me, being as sober as long as I've been, I'm over 10 and a half years myself. And like just looking back on
Yeah.
my journey, um, kind of one of the realizations I've come to is like sobriety is just like pretty much personal development. Like you're discovering who you really are. And then as you go, you pick up different tools and tricks and stuff. That's why I like tell people like sobriety isn't a one size fits all. Like it's not like you go to AA and then you'll get better and that's it. It's like you might need
Right.
to go to AA, pick some stuff out of there that works for you because not everyone, it's not going to resonate with everyone, right? Or maybe you'll go
Right.
over to do a little bit of smart recovery, or maybe you'll listen to a podcast like this and you'll hear somebody talk through something and you'll be like, oh shit, right? So for
Yeah.
me, it's just been and I started my journey with AA and I took a lot of stuff from that. Like part of it
Yeah.
was the stories that other people told that like helped me realize different patterns in my life to
Yeah.
kind of like make a plan for myself going forward and making better decisions. Cause like when I first got into AA, I thought it was like a cult. I was like, I'm never going to go to AA. Right. But then I ended up getting in through a buddy of mine and it wasn't what I thought. Like at the end of the day, like I ended up going for a while, but it turned out it just wasn't for me. Like it didn't resonate with me. I never ended up like going back to drinking or anything, but it just felt like something was missing. Right.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing a bunch of different things. And I think for me, like the type of person I am, I'm just like super ADD and like balls to the walls, go, go, go. Right. So I got really lucky in that I got to get onto a commercial crab fishing boat. So when I was out fishing, there was literally no time to sit and like think about anything but work, right? Like I was just grinding balls to the walls 20 plus hours a day for months on end, right? So
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if that's like something you can kind of think about, because I don't know, like, because I what I found is most alcoholics are kind of like that. If their hands are idle, then it gives them more time to kind of be too much in their head, and then they
Yeah,
overthink things, and then they allow those like justifications, like what I like to call it is like the devil on your shoulder, kind of whispering in your ear, saying, "Oh, you've been good. You can go out for a drink. You can just have just one, like just the same old stuff like that."
right.
And that's part of the insanity of like continuing to make the same mistakes, right?
Yeah,
So I'm not sure if that helps you, or like what's your thoughts around that, like
absolutely. Yeah,
at the
no,
beginning
that's
of your journey?
yeah. I mean, like that's such a big point. Like, if you can stay busier, with anything, whether it's work, whether it's making
A
money,
hobby?
whether it's yeah, a hobby, something you love. That, those are that's those are super useful tools, like you said, because it's almost like it's not just about occupying the time, but it's like there's a motivation that comes along with those things and completing those tasks that kind of stifles the urge to drink. It like just makes it easier. It makes it easier to not, you're not always like, man, I really want to drink, but I'm not gonna. It's not like that. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to always be like that. It can be like, I don't feel like drinking at all. Like it's the last thing I want to do right now. And like that's where you want to stay. And I know that's easier
Yeah.
said than done, but like that's it, man. Like staying busy, staying motivated, just keeping at the forefront like those reminders. Like I don't want to miss out. I don't want to miss out on like anything to do with my kids because I was drinking. Like
Yeah.
period. Like anything. Even just like not recitals and stuff aside, but like just dad, come color with me, or like come,
Yeah.
come snuggle, come play, or something like that. You know that
Just spending the time.
yeah, like that has to I always have to be available for that, like always on call. And then again, like the weeks that I don't have my kids, it's I just have to remind myself like where the alcohol will take me at the end of that journey. Like, whether it's like 5 days or even 2 days of just, drinking back to back, like it leaves me with a great deal of anxiety. I think a lot of that is like
Hmm.
I live for a week that I can't account for. Like I don't have any sense
Yeah.
of like, what happened. Like I existed. My lungs kept moving, my heart kept moving, but that's it. Like nothing up here. And there's like this weird disassociation that can happen. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what the term would be, but I don't even know if it's been discovered. But it's like when that happens, when like your brain just goes on autopilot, there's like something weird internally that happens. Like there's a weird, like getting back into routines, like just the routine you may have been in for a year is now like, what, wait, what was I doing again? Like, like, how was I doing this process? Like just dumb stuff. And so I just gotta, for me, it's like, I gotta remember that stuff because it's easy for me to forget. And again, especially when like I was going into the story about last night when I dropped my kid off and then mom wants to start like a big fight. Those are like the toughest times. Because I knew I was just going to be like anxious all night, like before bed, like 6 hours of my life. I could have gone to the liquor store and medicated, but but it's like false medication. Like I would have woken up
Hmm.
today, same problems on my plate. This would not have been processing any of it like it has been. So it's like all that processing hurts and it sucks, but it's completely necessary. And now like I don't feel like drinking at all. Like I was able to make it over
Yeah.
that hump. And like that's, those are really sort of very subtle. So subtle sometimes that we overlook them or we never acknowledge them to begin with. But like those little things you can do, like those little things you can acknowledge and be aware of. Like the more you can be aware in this game, the better.
I think that's the most important thing too, like about long-lasting sobriety, is being able to have that self-awareness. Because, like you said, like it's super easy to get into robot mode, and then you're just not even sure what you're doing. You're just following a habit pattern, right? And like if you've been drinking for a long period of time, then that habit pattern is like so ingrained in you that like when something happens in your life that causes you to be emotionally elevated, then you just go, oh, robot mode, and then you just fall back into that path, and you're just in it. And then all of a sudden you wake up a week later, like you said, and you have no recollection of what even happened, right?
Yeah.
And like I've seen that so many times, like even with some friends of mine that they're like struggling to stay on the path and get sober. It's like they get good for a period of time, and then it's the same thing. It's like something happens and they can't quite get over that hump of when life happens and you get into that emotional elevation, and then they
Yeah.
fall back into that same habit pattern. It just happens over and over again, right? So it's just like the pattern just keeps coming up for me, and seeing the same thing. It's just like history repeats itself, and it's the same thing with sobriety, right? So that's why you got to make changes and stuff like that. But like I want to ask, like, do you still hang around with those friends that were just more of a drinking buddy as opposed to real friends, or like, how does your friend group look?
Not really, man. But in fact, their grandpa, we were all very close. And he was like a grandpa to me, but their grandpa passed away just like a couple of months ago. Um, and I told my buddy Adam, like, I also my hip. This is like pre-surgery, and it was in shambles. But and it would like just go out randomly in public. So I had like this. I
Oh
was really
shit.
not enjoying. Yeah, dude, it was terrible. I was really not
No.
enjoying like going out for whatever. And not that this was his funeral, and I really wanted to see him off, but I did not. And I told my buddy Adam, I was like, dude, I love that guy so much, and like I love you guys, and you know that. But I'm like between my head and just also like the crowd. Um, I'm just gonna keep him in my thoughts and prayers. I'll keep you all there. But yeah, so I didn't make it to that funeral because I just like it was they were trying to. This is a new one. I haven't really heard of this one, but like drinking before the funeral. That's like something that
Mm-hmm.
they were like,
Yeah.
hey man, like we're all over it. My dad's like, come on over, um and as much fun as I'm sure that would have been, it's just it's me trying to get away from that stuff. And it's the heartbreaking part is it's heartbreaking and it's not because it's like yeah, like I thought I had these really like super deep running lifelong friends. Um, I mean, this kid and I met when we were like 11 or 12.
Mhm.
Um, so, and then like there was a time where like 2 years had gone by where I was sober, and he called me, and like this is like how this kind of this perfect snapshot of our friendship. I pick up the phone, I'm like, hey, what's up, man? And he's like, hey, are you still sober? Or are you still not drinking? And I said, yeah. And he just hangs up the phone, like no
Ah, yeah.
words. And
Hmm.
like he's
I've
not, I
been
mean, he's
there.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's not being a dick. I mean, there was partial truth to that. Like, but he's also just like a
Mhm.
funny guy, and like that's how he's gonna. We haven't talked in forever, and like that's how he's gonna talk to me for
Yeah.
all of 10 seconds. But again, like he didn't. He also didn't want to hang out with me sober. So there's, you got to kind of swallow some of those tougher pills to swallow. But then, I mean, I look back on it, and like that's the thing too. All of these, you're able to see so much that you weren't able to see before with a sober mind,
Mhm.
um, and I was just able to see like look, I'm always going to keep that guy on my phone. I'm going to reach out to him every now and then and check up on him, but he's not the best friend. Like we're not best friends to each other. Like we never really
Yeah.
knew each other on it. We never went through some of those situations that friends go through, like in order to forge the bond because we had Jack Daniels to do it for us. Like that was
Yeah.
we would just get drunk instead, and we thought we were bonding that way, and we were in many ways. But like
Yeah.
again, it's if you just build any relationship on the foundation of that, and that's your foundation, and that goes away, your foundation goes away. Like this is common sense stuff. It's understandable to see like why friendships would fall by the wayside,
Mhm.
and why some of the alcoholics are like scared of that.
Yep, exactly. And I just wanted to ask that because like I see it all the time, like people trying to get sober, they get some sobriety under their belts and stuff like that, but then they want to continue hanging around with their drinking buddies that aren't their actual friends, because then they end up going back to drinking and doing drugs, all that kind of
Yep.
stuff, like with those same friends, right? So
Yep.
like that's kind of why I wanted to ask, because like I think that's a super important thing for people to understand, is like you can't just say, oh, I'm going to get sober but I'm going to continue living the same life I lived, right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense, right? Because like, and then you
Yeah.
look at the saying, like you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with most, and it makes a lot of sense because it's like if all your friends are out drinking, going to bars, clubbing, partying, all that kind of stuff, and you don't do that, then it's like, well, you're not going to have fun when you're out with them, and they're not going to have fun when you're doing things that you want to do, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it's just something that I think is super important for people to understand. Another thing that I was kind of thinking about the other day is like how different we are, like for what gets us to stay sober. And like you were talking about, you have a wife, like your kids and stuff like that. And it's crazy because like something for one person might not be enough for another person. Because I know somebody
Yeah.
else who has children and stuff as well. And like I know he loves them to death. Like he would do anything for them. And like he says that like he's doing all this for his kids, but then he's not actually showing up and like putting in the work and staying sober for his kids,
Yeah.
right? So it just to think about that, because like I know for some people's triggers are like if you see alcohol and stuff like that, it might be like something that would get you into drinking mode and you go out and drink. And I know that's a big issue with everyone. Like for me, thinking back in the beginning, I never really had that issue. And in the beginning, I tried to continue living the same life that I lived, going to bars and hanging out with my old drinking buddies who weren't real friends, right? But
Yeah.
I kind of got tired of like going out, being out with them. And you know how drunk people are. Like when you're drunk yourself, you don't understand like what you're doing. But then when you're sober and you're having a conversation with someone and they're repeating themselves, they're like slobbering all over you, stuff like that. It's just like, well, I just don't like that. I notice it now because I'm clear of mind,
Right.
right? But so do you have like anything in mind that like you're kind of planning going forward of things that like maybe like goals, anything like that that's kind of going to help you stay on the straight and narrow?
Yeah. I've kind of, I don't know, it was weird midlife crises. Um, got like a bunch of like workout gear. I mean, I got like my little home gym, but like, I want to start like
Yeah.
getting out like and walking. My
Mm.
my home is my office too, and that's like for a lot of
Yeah.
us. And so
Mhm.
sometimes it's like, I know you go on like your mountain runs and stuff, and that's super important. I need to start doing the same. Like I was just going on like this past year, it just got to the point I'm like, dude, I need to like just get out of my physical space. And I would just go on like these country drives out in like farmland and stuff and just like go spot deer and like
Nice.
just be in the open, like to see open, to see no walls. Um, and change that scenery and like just little things like that. It helps so. I mean, it's crazy how good I feel after that. And so I'm like, let me get some running shoes. So like that's kind of, I know it seems silly, but like those are some things that I'm seeing. I'm seeing like the light shine through, and like I'm just heading towards the light. Um, and things that have proven to be helpful and healthy. Um, what else? I downloaded like the AA app so I can start like going to
Yeah.
those meetings as much as possible. I mean, they're all over all the time. So
Yeah.
I think that would be helpful. But yeah, man, I mean, really just not immediately jumping to, I mean, literally, man, like I'm a stone's throw, like quarter of a mile from the liquor store. Doesn't help.
Yeah.
But
No.
that, like, not immediately jumping to, like again last night, not like just sitting there in the pain for a little bit. I'm gonna be okay. It just sucks, but I'm gonna be fine. Um, and like the more I've analyzed it since then, I'm like, she sounded like it was incoherent. It was like my kid wrote it. It was like,
Mhm.
you know, uh, just so many things that like it's weird that I even let it bother me. And I could go into like some more in depth as to why it did, but um, just things in the back of my mind that her mom will play on, but not immediately jumping to grab my keys and go to the ABC store. Like
Yeah.
that's a lot, man, just in those first few moments. Because I think what as alcoholics, what we think is like, no, like if I sit here for another minute longer, I'm going to explode. Or if I have to do that for another hour, or 2 hours, or 6 hours before bed, I'm going to explode. You're not though,
Mhm.
and
No.
and the pain subsides actually much faster than 6 hours later. Like and you because
Yeah.
you're processed, the pain means this is in the gym, like doing the work. That's good. Let
Yeah.
it happen. And like then you realize like okay, like I made it through that. I now I don't even feel like drinking. I just got to remember that next time and repeat that. And that's again, man, that's always like so much easier said than done in the moment. Like who wants to hurt in the moment if you
100%.
don't have to? But I mean like that's really kind of like my game plan going forward, just There's so much, man. Like it's easy for me to like get all over the place with this, with some of these answers, but like again, just identifying the triggers as best you can and understand that they may change and it's a moving target. And, because it's not always depressing stuff. Sometimes I feel so good and like things are going so well that I don't know if it's like I
The
hit a
little devil
plateau.
starts talking.
Yeah, or if it's like, let's
Yeah.
celebrate, or if it's not even that yet, but like
Yeah.
I've gone through
Hmm.
like a few weeks of just this blissful like euphoria where now it's like baseline and it's or like I'm plateauing and I'm not getting those, dopamine kicks or whatever. Like I don't know. But like those I've noticed it can like those triggers can be, it doesn't just have to be bad stuff. It can be that everything's perfect too. And timing's right. Like, oh, my kids are on vacations or they're whatever, they're doing this, they're, not gonna see them for 5 days. Let me go play some 80s hair metal and get wasted. And like that's
Yeah.
it's remembering not to, it's like just it's hard, man. It's constant trying to keep it in the front of your mind, like how painful and like just how much anguish you're in afterward, and on so many levels, not just physically how you feel, not just dehydration, not but like the anxieties, the inabilities to go and function, the inabilities to go and deal with what's on your plate and the shit you got to get done. It's just going to sit there and pile up and add more so to your anxiety. And now you're stuck with that. You have two options. You can go back to the liquor store and medicate again and drink through this bout
Hmm.
of anxiety to handle the first anxiety, or you can be stuck in the pain and you just got to sober up and you got to get through that. And you didn't have to deal with any of that pain if you were just willing to deal with that smaller little bit of pain before, or whatever, like whatever led you to drinking to begin with. If you were able to just stay in that moment a little bit longer, dude, set a timer. Set a timer for an hour.
100%.
See if
Yeah.
you can make it for an hour. Just take one step, one baby step. Set it for 30 minutes. Just make it another 30 minutes before you grab your
Yeah.
keys and go to the store.
100%. No, that's really, really powerful information there. Like, that's why, like, if you hear anyone that's been in sobriety for any period of time, they say one day at a time. Because then if you tell somebody to think about like, oh, I'm going to be sober for the rest of my life, that's pretty big to kind of comprehend in your mind, right? And it can be
Absolutely.
overwhelming for a lot of people. Because I know for me, especially in the beginning, before I had some sobriety under my belt, if I went and sat down, I was like thinking about, okay, I'm going to be sober to the rest of my life. Oh, okay, when I'm going to live till 70, 75. I'm only at the time when I got sober. I was really lucky. I got sober at 23, right? So I'm like, 50 years. What the hell, right? So it's like it makes a lot of sense for me to just kind of break it down and just, if you need to, just do the smallest time horizon that you can even possibly, like, even if it's a second, just be like, okay, I'm just going to sit in the moment for 1 second, and then the
Yeah.
second after, right? And then you just focus on that, because that's another thing too, is like being able to have your focus about things like that, right? So,
Yeah.
and then another thing you were saying, and the reason why I asked the question is because I know how powerful it is to have some tools in your belt, to be able to pull out when shit gets tough. So it's like you said, there's going to be so many different things that you're going to have to tackle. But as long as you have some tools in the tool belt to be able to get you through that shit, because like I know for me, some of the best things that I've ever done, like the worst things that have happened in my life, like I kind of default to physical fitness and stuff. So when my wife ended up saying that she was going to leave me, and this was probably late February, and I didn't see it coming. And like in the moment, I was like at the complete lowest. I felt like an absolute piece of shit. But the thing that I knew was that if I was just to sit there idle and do nothing, um, it would just broke me, and I would have, and I had the thought to drink so many times every fucking day,
I'm sure.
right? But then
Yeah.
what I did was just like, boom, I'm gonna get in the gym. Boom, I'm gonna go for a run. And then after I did that, it would give me that release to be able to not sit there and dwell in the emotion, because that's another thing too, is it's like I used to drink because I wanted to escape the emotions that I was feeling when shit hit the fan, right? So it was like even 10 years later, that's how powerful those initial habits are. Is like you still want to
Yeah.
fall back into it. That's how powerful um alcoholism is.
Mhm.
you're always going to have that little chatter in your mind. But if you have those tools that you can use and bring to the battlefield of, because that's what it is. It doesn't have to be a battle, but at least you have these things predetermined. Is like, when this happens, then I can do this, and this is going to give me some release going forward. Like counting, like having a 30-minute timer or something. Just say I'm just going to sit in it for 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
It's like just stuff like that is like so powerful, and it's like sometimes I forget because I'm so far in my journey now. Like a lot of the stuff is second nature because now I've built habits in the opposite direction,
Right.
like doing good for me. So when you say stuff like that, it's just like yes, yes, boom, boom, and it's like I just get super stoked when I see people like earlier in their journey, like having these realizations, stuff that I didn't even notice in the beginning, right? So, um, but it does sound like you're super motivated to move forward. It sounds like you've got a good why. You're starting to accumulate those tools in your tool belt, all that kind of stuff. But yeah. So I guess before we close here, do you have any final advice for someone who might be struggling and like, they're not even sure if they even have a problem?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, man, because I actually was going to AA for not super consistently, but like, I don't
Mhm.
know, I probably attended like 3 or 4 meetings in a month.
Yep.
Um, and, and it really at the request of my daughter's mom, I was just like, yeah, I'll do it, whatever. And
Mm.
I felt really out of place. So it's kind of funny that you said like what your initial impressions were with AA, but like I felt really out of place because I didn't have all these crazy stories yet. And I didn't have all this anguish yet. That like when you go around and share your story, like I mean, I'm not even kidding. To my right was a woman who had to be in her 80s. Like she shouldn't be driving anyway. But she was like, I rolled my car again last night. And I'm like, I can't compete with that. Like, I mean, that's a hell of a story. And like just not, I just I don't know. I guess maybe there was some willingness to deny alcoholism. And I don't even know if it was that. I don't know. The honest answer
Mhm.
was I don't know. I just know that I didn't feel comfortable there. I didn't feel like I wanted to
Yeah.
share anything. I didn't feel like I had anything to share. And I would tell my daughter's mom now, like, look, I don't feel like they're gonna laugh at whatever I say, especially if I go in there and say I think I might have a problem. And I know, like now I realize, like they certainly would not have. But
Yeah.
it's just, it was just an uncomfortable thing for me. So, um, but I would say it's hard to give anybody advice that isn't like such a blanket statement. But again, it's such a moving target that you almost have to. It's almost like the more specific you get with some of these things, the less helpful they are to a broad group of individuals. So, um, just the why, like you were saying, you got to put pen to paper, and I mean that. Like either get on your laptop or pen to paper, and like really, because that'll make you like endeavor to actually like go through the thought process of identifying some of these things in your life that you want to change, like what you don't like about what's going on in your life. Doesn't have to all be related to alcohol. Just start, you know, um, throwing up words everywhere onto the page. Like just whatever you're feeling, get it out there because you're going to get somewhat of a piece map of like what just what's going on in your life. Like check in with yourself. That's really the best way to go about it. Is it alcohol? Like is alcohol what you're struggling with? Is it, okay, like, but what else are you struggling with? What are some of the other major things in your life that like you woke up today and you're just not feeling today? Like, like what why? Like, and what could be different to make you feel that way? And that's, I know that's like maybe like an eye rolling request for people to do, but I think that's the most helpful because, like you said, if you're not able to identify any of these things, and that's oftentimes what it is. Like I didn't realize I've been likely depressed most of my life. Like just looking at how I've
Mhm.
handled situations, like so many different things throughout my life, like big milestones. Um, and I think a good part of that is because I didn't have a brain fortified to like cope with a lot of stuff, especially when I started drinking at 11 or 12 years old. And when I say like
Mhm.
started drinking, I mean like first, like I was 12, had 8 shots of Jack Daniels and rode my buddy's scooter into his pool. Like I didn't hold back.
Oh yeah.
Like I jumped right
Yeah.
into alcoholism. So that's, like that was the thing, is like I just couldn't identify a lot of stuff in my life, and I'm 38 years old. I'm just starting to do that really, like in my 30s was when I started to like really looking back and trying to analyze myself as best I could. So like commit to that for yourself. You know, if I'm giving anybody advice, like commit to at least that, because it's invasive in the sense like it's going to hurt to navigate that, but you don't got to go do it in front of a group of people if you don't want to. You don't got to go do it in front of a therapist if you don't want to. Although I think all of those things are also very fortifying in a sense. Like they, you know, especially if you're able to like get on something like this and kind of spill your guts out and you know whatever motivates you. Like that's, you got to be able to find like the things that motivate you. If you're stuck in that moment, like you're saying, you're tensed up and you're like, dude, I'm gonna go grab the keys. I'm going to get beer. I'm going to get like liquor. Just try different things, man. Like again, try setting the timer for 30 minutes and drop down and do a set of push-ups and just see how you feel after. I know that sounds so fucking silly, but just try it. Like, you know,
That's
like
not
it's,
silly at all, man.
well, and it's like, you don't have to, I'm not asking you to go and do like a bunch of, you know, cause I know
Yeah.
that's a thing. Like when we're alcoholics, we're not motivated for shit, man. We just want to, we just want to stop drinking, you know, that much. But like, we're
Yeah.
not going to go, you know, we don't want to do a ton of work to get there, and that's okay. Like, I'm not saying you got to go make this some crazy Everest climb. Like, just start with simple things like that and see how you feel. See how you're able to change your biochemistry very quickly, like in the moment. Like those are big things.
Massive.
Yeah. So, you know, sorry I couldn't offer the listeners better advice there. It's just it really is
No,
something
that's excellent stuff, man. That's really good stuff.
you just
And
have
like
to knock it out. Everybody's different.
100%. And then that's why I keep saying like sobriety isn't a one size fits all. And that's why I relate to sobriety and personal development. It's the same damn thing. Because it's like,
Yeah.
you don't go and get sober and then your life is just fine, right? Because it's
Yeah.
not, it's like alcohol was a problem, but that doesn't just mean life is going to be perfect now, right? And
Yeah.
in the beginning, it was so funny because like looking back, I just want to laugh because I was like, okay, as soon as I get sober, my life will be fine. Like, everything will be
Right.
good. And it was just like, yeah, everything got better, but it wasn't what I thought it was in the beginning. Because it's like, okay, now
Yeah.
the real journey's starting. Because now I got to learn all this other stuff about, like, because I didn't know who the hell I was. Like, I didn't have any interests. I didn't have any hobbies. I had to learn how to be a person and
Exactly.
um, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's just like, it's just a journey, and you're just going to have to develop who you are, and that's about it. And it's like, you're going to make mistakes, shit's going to happen, life is always going to be tough. But the thing is, if you're going through hard stuff in life, it's for a reason. It's for you to build you into the person you need to be so you can have a bigger impact on the people around you in your environment, right? Because like, if you look at
Absolutely.
anyone who's done anything with their life, it's like they didn't just have a life that they just breezed through, right? They went through a bunch of challenges and hardships and stuff like that. And it's like, that's one thing that I used to want to run away from, is the challenge of stuff. But what I've come to realize is I need to take on this challenge and get through it so I can be a better person on the other side of it, right? Like, what do you think about challenges? Like, do you have that same kind of mindset, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, again, man, it's the pain it's the pain that we're adapting to, so that life becomes less painful. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's your mind, that's everything at work trying to, you know, again, use all senses to take in this world around us, calculate it, you know, compute it, and then like, you know, um, sort of again adapt to that and like improve upon that, and evolve so that tomorrow is less painful. And like, so when you revisit those things, those same issues, you know, you're of a much stronger what am I trying to say? Like a much stronger mindset to just push through that stuff. So no, I mean, I think challenges, you know, all the time, like, you know, and it can be little stuff like this. Like, I mean, I was looking forward to this, but also it's like people may be reluctant to like get on here and talk about themselves, and you know, let that be a challenge. Let that be, because that's, I was going to say, like, especially for people who aren't able to identify things. And I'm still there. Like, I'm not, you know, I'm sure there's so many things that just are right under my nose that I can't pick up on yet. Um,
Yeah.
so it's important to like get at least in some sort of environment, again, if it's a therapist, even if it's a best friend, whatever, like where you can have these conversations, but you can speak honestly and say like, look, here's where I'm still struggling. And like, here's what I don't like about my life today. And I'm not sure how to go about that. Because likely in that room of like 10 to 20 other people is going to be someone who knows, or usually most of like a lot of those people know exactly that feeling that you're in and like how they
Yeah.
were able to jump through that hoop. And that's important, man, in this journey. Like don't reinvent the wheel. Like there's a lot that's been mapped out for you already. And that's the thing. Just so but yeah, to all these long-winded answers. But yes, to answer
It's
your
all
question,
good.
man, like challenges are everything, and it doesn't mean like don't beat yourself up if you don't rise to a challenge or you let one fall by the wayside. That the takeaway is that acknowledgement, that like it's important for you to step up to these challenges, and that you wish you didn't let that one fall by the wayside or you didn't back down from that one. Again, like you don't go stand in the mirror and just close fist punch yourself. Like that's not the idea. The takeaway is like that you just have this understanding and it's something that you're working towards, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be your life's crowning achievement and journey, and let it be that. And that's okay.
Yeah, 100%. No, I love that message, man. And I'm just super pumped that you were wanting to get on with me, be my first guest on the podcast. Actually
Man, thanks for
take the
having.
challenge on of coming and letting me grill you for almost an hour here.
Oh, dude, no,
But I think I did good for my first
no,
attempt at the interview.
you, you were great, man. I again, I'm sorry. Like, at least now you have a great precedent set to say, like, for your next guest, hey, I want you to watch this guy. Here's everything not to do or say, and then like that's the progress. That's how we make progress here. So
There you go. Well, no, I think there's a lot to take away from here, and I think anyone listening is going to be able. They might not agree with everything, they might not be able to use everything, but no one's going to watch a podcast and be able to take everything and run with it, right? Like they're going to get some nuggets
not in
here,
this
nuggets there,
arena,
because I
no.
know when. No, exactly, and I know when I'm listening to different people talk about things, it's like there's some things like I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. Oh, that's a fucking nugget, and I take it and then I implement it
Absolutely,
because that's another thing I want people to know is like when you come here, listen to these podcasts, have people share their stories and stuff. If you get something from it, just please put it into action because if you just take it in and be like, oh, that's good, and then do nothing with it, it's the same thing. You're falling in that insanity of doing the same shit you've always done, and then you're not getting the results you want. Right. So
yeah.
I guess we'll wrap it up there. But before we go, did you have like social media or anything like that that you'd want to share with people to follow you on your journey, anything like that? Or
I don't, man, but again, Chase Van Dyke, if anybody, if I can ever lend a hand and at least be an ear for you to talk to or bounce ideas off of, or just complain about your day, I'm here for that. I'm here to help in any way that I can. So, and Andrew, same to you, buddy. If I can help do anything with any of the projects you got going on or whatever, just let me know.
yeah, cool, brother. I appreciate that, and I'm gonna be definitely asking to be on another episode. So,
Sweet, I'll
yeah,
be
that
there.
was the episode, folks. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you on the next one.